So I did not know there was a time limit. Now the pressure's on. I talk a lot, don't I? Okay, so this is part 2. We were talking about quote weaving and having a variety of quote weaves, and we talked about the complete sentence and if it's incomplete sentence. And I also put a link for additional quote weaving notes, but again, we've done this before since semester 1, semester 1. Okay, moving forward. Now, in our second draft, we get to start being a little bit more creative and add some voice to our academic writing. And here are 3 different ways that you can do that, and you can add voice to your research paper. One of them is through figurative language or making creative comparisons. So this is fun because just because it's a research paper, it's an argumentative research paper, doesn't mean it has to be dry and boring. Instead, it's going to be more persuasive and argumentative if you actually are engaging to the reader. So you can be creative. A few ways that you can do that is actually like verbally illustrate or paint a picture with your words and explain the facts that way. That's why we do that for our like attention getter or for a hook. It's to engage the reader and have them like see it in their mind's eye. So being more descriptive, just like we were for our personal narratives in semester 1, you can actually be more persuasive that way. You can also create a comparison that your reader will understand, and then they can also see it in their mind's eye instead of just listing facts or like data. You guys know that I'm not great at math at all. And so if somebody tells me like, oh, you know, the distance between that is 100 yards, I'm like, I can't really visualize that. But if you tell me it's the length of a football field, now I can see it in my mind's eye. If you tell me that like, you know, a giraffe is 34 feet, I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I don't know how much 34 feet is. Like, I'm 5'5". So, and I start like going down this rabbit hole. But if you say like, oh, that's a 2-story building, then I can like understand it immediately. So after you give like a direct quote or you use data or statistics, explain that to your reader in a way that they can understand, but it also still fits like the tone of your paper. So don't do something super funny if your topic is like really serious, making like a goofy comparison. We've talked about figurative language and how important the effect of the figurative language is, so make sure that it's appropriate for your topic. And then also another one that you can do is just like be dramatic. Like if you're trying to be persuasive, then really like stress like what's at stake, like what are all the things that could go wrong, like how could why does this change need to happen, and what are you trying to argue? And you need to do that in a way that's like dramatic, so that way there's more tension in your paper. That can also make it more exciting and creative. So adding tension by being dramatic, that's always a fun way to do that too. Okay, moving on. Another way that you can add voice in your academic writing is by having or reiterating your own stance on the topic. This is argumentative in nature, so you want to always remind your reader like, hey, I am for this change or I am against this change. And you can do that by having like an academic tone and purposeful diction. And should I like move this down? I don't know if you could see that before. Okay. Sorry guys. But with our academic tone, we still want to avoid contractions, which I saw a ton of contractions in our first draft. We still want to have high level vocabulary and avoid those just lame words, bad, sad, mad, glad, all of that. And then you can use personal pronouns in this paper, especially because you're like addressing a specific audience. And if you're saying like we or I, that is okay, as long as you've established that you are a credible source or that you have experience with the topic or you've done a lot of research to about that topic to really relay. And you can always reiterate your stance by having like a dramatic word choice or using adjectives and remind the reader just of your perspective and what you were trying to argue. And another thing that you can do is transition and remind the reader of like the previous idea, because your papers are getting pretty long. It's multiple body paragraphs. So make sure that you're always like building off of that previous body paragraph. And you're reminding them or like, you know, using like transitional words, like in addition to, or as, you know, no, I don't like it as previously stated, but you can do that too. Okay. Moving forward, look at that transition, dang. Okay, sentence construction. This is also something that can make our academic paper a lot more interesting. And it's just simply by adding variety. We don't want it to sound monotone and have every sentence sound exactly the same and have like the same amount of words. We want variety. So now that we're on our second draft and we like understand the content of our paper, we can start going through and adding more of like the fun, exciting parts to it, such as variety. So you can switch up like the sentence structure or like the order of your phrasing. So you have like a compound or a complex sentence or compound complex sentence, or start with an introductory phrase this time, or just switch around like the different phrasing in order to break it up and have a variety of types. And that will also force you to have different types of punctuation. So maybe you're using a semicolon and you're using a semicolon and then like the word however, like a fanboy, and then a comma after it. So just add dashes, add parentheses, not just for your citations, but as like non-essential information. Use an exclamation point every once in a while. Have different sentence lengths. Maybe like if you're trying to really drive home an important dramatic point, it's like a really, really short sentence. That's just a few words. We talked about italicizing important things that you're trying to stress or draw the audience's attention to. So make sure that you are building off of like things from Unit 1, guys, that we have been working on all semester. And then if you are feeling that you're repeating the same word over and over again, go back to our topic proposal and look for synonyms of like the common words that you've used. So that way you're not just saying like poaching, 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 and you're actually using a different word about your topic that still conveys the same like meaning. Okay, guys? So the thesaurus is going to be your great friend for this. So if you feel like you're getting redundant, you probably are. Go back and revise. Okay, some examples of using voice. This does not have to be boring. I don't know if you guys can see which ones we can see, but let's start at the top. So it says, the battle to combat the adverse effects of racial discrimination became evident in the 1970s, blah, 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 blah. But I like that it says like battle to combat, like it is actually physical. There's like action there. We know the audience or the writer is saying that it's like has action. It's a show not tell kind of idea. An attempt to rid themselves of the stereotypes that had plagued them for over a century. It's not like it's just something that like occurred to them or it happened to them. It plagued them. That shows that they're being attacked, that they are the ones who are like victims of it. Again, that's adding more voice. So it's just simple word choice and diction that makes it more exciting. Here, as I just like skim over the third example, it uses a dash that adds variety, and it's also emphasizing like this last point, this last little bit of the sentence to make sure that we notice it and that we pay attention to it. So being recognized for their achievements, the number becomes even smaller, dash, even to the point of non-existence. And it also emphasizes to the reader that like the number is extremely, extremely small. It barely exists. So you guys can look at those for different variety, like I just see here real quick. Ooh, guys, my mom's calling me. Sorry, Mom. Love you. Okay. Ooh, sorry. Here they use a semicolon, and then that adds variety to the sentence structure, or by using different punctuation. They are reminding us of the stance by saying this unhealthy balance of numbers already demonstrates a wide gap between what one sees on the silver screen in comparison to reality. So they're reminding us of their stance by saying like, this is an unhealthy balance of numbers. Like this is not good. I am against what is happening right now. And then they didn't just say like on TV or on film or in movies. They used a synonym by saying silver screen. It's another way of saying in the movie theater. And then we have a different type of sentence structure. And it says, yet these statistics only scratch the surface. Again, reminding us that like these statistics are just the beginning of it. And they're using a little bit of a cliche, but that's great. Like it gives more exciting, more voice to something that would otherwise be really dry. And then it says, from what seeds are these snaking roots of a problem branching out? The fact that they use question mark is exciting and not very dry. It makes it more interesting to read. And then they even use figurative language, some personification there. So it makes it a lot more fun to read, guys. It doesn't have to be boring. Just because it's an argumentative research paper does not mean you should be falling asleep. Okay, last thing. our works cited. So we've already done our bibliography, and this slide is just a reminder of what's the difference between a works cited and a bibliography. Our bibliography is going to be a list of all of your sources that you have used. This is what we've been exporting from our Noodle tools, and it protects you from like plagiarism because it says everything that you've looked at. So you're going to have at least 10 entries into your bibliography, okay? Now, in addition to that, so this is going to be at the very, very, very end of your paper. In addition to that, you have to have a works cited. The works cited is going to be the list of sources that you actually quoted within your paper. So yes, it is going to be redundant and have some of the similarities with your bibliography. It will be repeated, but it's only what you use as an in-text citation for within your paper. So you'll probably have at least 3 entries, and you're literally just going to copy and paste those, copy them from your bibliography list and put them as like a works cited. So it's kind of like this is a rectangle and this is a square. A square is part of a rectangle, but a rectangle isn't necessarily a square. I think I said that right. Okay. So you will have on the same document of your final draft or of draft number 2, you will have like your conclusion paragraph. After you've like written your whole paper, it's MLA formatted, you have your conclusion paragraph. After that, you will have a centered title that says works cited, and then you're going to list your source entries that are just your sources that you used within your actual paper, your like in-text citations. And then after that, you're going to have another title that says bibliography, and this is a list of at least of all the sources that you've researched. So this is exactly from Noodle Tools, what we've been doing before. So feel free to export that bibliography from Noodle Tools, and then you're just gonna make a list of just the ones you used for your works cited, or like as your works cited, just the ones you used is your in-text citations. And our example that I'm gonna show you guys in just a little bit in the next video is going to have that done correctly too. Okay guys, well, that's what we have for right now. Good luck with draft number 2. It's going to be due Wednesday. And if you have a really solid first draft, this is going to be a piece of cake because you just have to go in and make sure you have all these requirements and do a little bit of zhuzhing. But otherwise, it shouldn't be too difficult. So Wednesday, March 25th, draft number 2 is going to be due. Okay, guys, good luck.